Hello, you're watching Broadcasting Scotland, and this is part 2 of our special report from the SNP Spring Conference. On Saturday, the main topics of discussion for the party members included social security, Ponsati, Brexit and immigration. First up this morning was Jeane Freeman, talking about Scotland's new Social Security Act.
Jeane Freeman MSP, thank you very much for joining us on Broadcasting Scotland today. It's wonderful to have you. I was listening to your speech on the Social Security Act, and I was wondering if you can give us a bit more detail of what it actually provides for those in Scotland.
So it's a pleasure to be with you. The Social Security Act is the act that allows us now to take responsibility for the 11 benefits that will be devolved to the Scottish Parliament. So those cover everything from disability assistance, attendance allowance, carers allowance, Best Start grant, the grant for low-income families and children, funeral payments, cold weather payments and so on. So it's only 11 benefits, 15% of the total UK spend, but what it allows us to do is create a new public service in Scotland to deliver social security.
What are the kind of values that carry around with this act for you?
Well, I think one of the fundamental values for us is that social security is a collective investment that we make in ourselves and in each other, because the fact of the matter is neither you nor I know that a day might come because of ill health, family breakup, bereavement, losing our job. We might need social security support. So it's like the NHS. It's a contract between the state and the citizen. And unfortunately, in successive Tory and Labour governments, that contract's been broken. And it's been used as a way of trying to balance the public finances. It hasn't worked, but the people who've suffered are the poorest and the most vulnerable amongst us. So our social security system is founded on the basis of that collective responsibility, but also that it is a human right. So it is a rights-based system. It's not about entitlements, it's about rights. And the principles of dignity, fairness and respect are in that legislation. For the first time, certainly in the UK, possibly more further afield.
So with this legislation, what groups or individuals helped you create it?
Well, actually a lot of people. We've been actively consulting, and by that I mean direct conversations with people across Scotland, the length and breadth, the islands, across the place, since 2016. And so we've engaged with all the third sector organisations you'd expect, the ones involved in welfare rights advice, organisations that are specific to conditions like Arthritis UK, Macmillan Cancer, Parkinson's, so on. But most importantly of all, with people with direct personal experience of the UK benefit system, because they're the ones who know how it makes them feel, what's wrong with it, how they would like it fixed, and anything at all, although I have to admit we didn't get much of this, where they think it works okay. And we're continuing to do that because we've recruited 2,500 of those individuals who voluntarily will work with us for the next 3 years as we build that social security system in Scotland.
How would you contrast your social security bill, well, the Scottish Government's social security bill, should I say, in comparison to the rest of the UK? Or should I say more specifically Westminster?
Well, I think there are a number of fundamental differences. I mean, the fact that we put it into law, that ours is a system based on human rights, is a major distinction between the way we look at this and the way that the Tories and Westminster look at welfare. We don't see welfare and welfare spending as an easy cash cow to make savings in. Quite the contrary, we're making some major investments, even in the 11 benefits we're going to be responsible for. And why is that the case? Because we understand that things happen to people in life that mean that they can't go to work, they're out of work, they have additional expenditure, they have long-term health conditions, disability, they grow older, as we all will. And in that circumstance, with low incomes, they need collective support, and that's what social security is. And we recognise that actually this isn't an act of charity. This is doing something that's smart, it makes sense, and it treats other people the way we'd expect to be treated. Now, I don't think there could be a sharper contrast between that way of looking at this and thinking about fellow citizens than that between ourselves and the Tories at Westminster.
In setting this up, do you believe the DWP have done enough to help you?
No, they've not. In fact, there's at least 3 instances where they're holding us back. So we have, because it's 11 benefits. So the UK welfare system stays, and we have to be able to work with it, because there'll be some people who will be receiving a financial support from the UK government as well as financial support from the Scottish government. So we have to make sure that the systems don't clash, right? And that what we give, if you like, with the Scottish hand isn't taken away, right, by the UK government. So we have to work really, really closely. That's been going on for 2 years now between Scottish Government civil servants and DWP civil servants, a lot of detail. But on 3 separate occasions where we've reached an agreement about a date when something will come over to us, they've reneged on that. So the very first one was that delay of a year in allowing the abolition of the bedroom tax at source within universal credit, a much simpler system, and we will pay them for that to happen, but they've delayed it by a year because they've got other priorities. They've delayed giving us a computer code by 4 months. You know, they need to work as quickly and as efficiently as we do, and we need to be at the top of their priority list.
I guess one argument that the Conservatives might make towards yourself is that actually, if you look at numbers, employment is up, we have less people in unemployment, so actually maybe the austerity measures they're proposing are actually working, and these cuts are actually doing a good job. How would you respond to that?
All of the evidence, absolutely all of the evidence, and not from what they would describe as the usual suspects. From our Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, Citizens' Advice in Scotland and in the UK, now from the Law Society, from the Department of Work and Pensions, the Work and Pensions Westminster Committee rather, all of the evidence is mounting up that 2 things. Universal credit does not work. It pushes people into poverty because of delays in payments, wrong payments, because the system is not set up to do the job properly, and they've frozen the benefits. So, and we've got to remember that actually 2/3 of people in poverty now are people who are in work. So it's not as straightforward as they would claim it to be, but their austerity measures are making the divide between those who have and can manage and those who haven't and are struggling every single day wider and wider. And our job as a Scottish Government is to do what we can to try and mitigate that. But if we had all the powers of a normal country, of course, then we could close that gap.
Well, let's talk about independence then. What would you do in the case of an independent Scotland to fill that gap then? What changes would you make to Westminster? The changes that we would do at Westminster, but in the scenario of independence?
Well, I certainly would stop universal credit. The core idea behind universal credit, which at the time had widespread support, which was to simplify the benefit system and make it easier for people to apply and secure what they needed, was a good idea that everyone supported. The implementation of it by the Tories has been shambolic. You can't fix something that's shambolic on the run, if you like, which is what they're trying to do, and they make it worse. So the first thing that we would do is just stop it, just halt it, have that wider conversation as we've done to create social security system already in Scotland, make sure we bring in the people who know what they're talking about, who know what it feels like, to help us work out the solutions, and then introduce a new and simplified and improved benefit.
Do you think right now in Westminster that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party are doing enough to oppose the Tories in government in terms of stopping austerity?
No, not at all. Not at all. They are most noticeable, I'm afraid, by their absence. So they have either abstained or voted for welfare cuts. They failed to challenge the situation at the weekly opportunity they're given. They self-evidently do not speak up for Scotland, yet at the same time won't listen to the SNP members there who are speaking up for Scotland. So as far as the Labour Party is concerned, that would be the Labour Party that wanted us all to remain in the Union because we're so valued. In Westminster never says a blind thing about Scotland. And yet we have to listen to Scottish Tories misrepresenting what's happening in this country, and fortunately can rely on SNP MPs to speak up for us.
When we began this conference, coming here, we learned about data that came out by YouGov and the Scottish Social Attitude Survey.
Yeah.
YouGov found that the SNP were increasing in the polls of both Holyrood and Westminster from previous polls, and the Scottish Social Attitude Survey found that independence is on the increase. In fact, faith in Scottish independence in terms of the economy is actually the most popular option out of multiple different options. Would you say then that this is the time that the momentum is behind the SNP and the independence movement, or would you argue that there's still a fair bit to go until the SNP and the Yes movement cross the finish line to achieve independence?
Well, I don't think it's as binary as that. I don't think it's either or like that. I think the momentum is there and is growing, and that people are looking seriously increasingly. I think the Growth Commission report was a big help to that. Whether or not everybody agrees with every single bit of it, it has restarted that conversation, and that's really important just now. The timing is perfect as people increasingly understand what the shambles of Brexit brings and how devastating that will be for our local economies as well as our national economy. They want to look and see if there's an alternative. So that conversation is starting, but at the same time, we need to be respectful to people in Scotland. And being respectful to them is to let them take the time to work these things through and think these things through for themselves. Our job is to enable that and to help that, but it's not yet the right time to say, so everybody's ready, let's press the button now. There's too much uncertainty around on Brexit. Good Lord, every single day the UK government changes its position on what it's doing or not doing, because the only thing it cares about is the Tory party and who's in power and who's not in power in the Tory party. So between now and March 2019, who knows what shifts they'll have made back and forward. And we need to keep up with that and help people in Scotland understand not only what's going on, but what the implications are for us here, for our economy, for our communities across the country.
Jeane Freeman MSP, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
I then spoke with Joanna Cherry, who'd been talking earlier at a fringe event about devolution of immigration to Scotland, which is one of the prominent themes of this conference.
Joanna Cherry, thank you very much for joining us today at Broadcasting Scotland. We'll kick things off. This morning you were at a fringe meeting and there's a discussion around the idea there's a rising populism all over Europe, but somehow Scotland could be seen as an exception of success. Why was that the case in the argument today?
Well, I think what we were talking about at the fringe meeting this morning was Scotland's future immigration needs. I think what you're referring to is a member of the audience, a journalist asked whether there was hostility to immigration in Scotland, and one of the specialist speakers on the panel made the point that there's rising hostility to immigration across Europe at the moment. And I said that, I've done a lot of door knocking in the last few years, obviously with general elections, Holyrood elections, referendums, and I very rarely come across hostility to immigration when I'm canvassing in Edinburgh. But it does exist in Scotland, but I don't think to the same extent. And I think in Scotland, we, because of the independence referendum, we've had a recent debate about what it is to be Scottish. And I think during that debate it was very clear that our nationalism was a civic nationalism. It wasn't based on ethnicity or even on identity. It was very much about being all-encompassing, welcoming people to Scotland. And of course during the referendum we had groups like Germans for Yes, English Scots for Yes, New Scots who supported independence, Asians for independence. So I think the nationalist movement in Scotland has been a very inclusive movement in a way that sadly isn't always the case in other parts of Europe, although it's interesting to observe in Catalonia. Again, it's a very civic movement for self-determination there and very inclusive.
What about in contrast to the UK government right now? Because as we know, recently we had the Windrush scandal with others who have been deported or are facing deportation.
Yeah.
What kind of values does that represent there for UK government?
I think what I would like to say about the Windrush scandal is the Tories would like us to believe that the Windrush scandal was a mistake and an aberration, but it wasn't. It is the inevitable consequence of Theresa May's policies, her hostile environment policy that you've just mentioned, and also the overall net migration targets that she set, first at 100,000 and then the tens of thousands. There's no evidence base for that migration target. She's never managed to meet it. If you're going to have a target as tight as that, then you're going to have to pick off low-hanging fruits, people whose migration status is not entirely clear, and get them out of the country in order to meet your target. And that was exactly what happened with the Windrush generation. I sit in the Joint Committee on Human Rights, and we took evidence a couple of weeks ago from 2 of the Windrush generation who were actually detained by the Home Office. And last week we got their files from the Home Office, and we were able to cross-examine the new Home Secretary and a Home Office official about those files. And those files were packed to the gunnels with evidence showing that those people had lived here for years and had every right to be here. There was no contrary evidence, but because there was an uncertainty about their immigration status, they were identified as the Home Office by what I would describe as low-hanging fruit and put into detention. They nearly left the country. One man was asked, which airport do you want to go to in Jamaica? And he said, I don't know, because I've not been in Jamaica since I was 8 years old. I don't even remember it. So I think that's what Windrush shows, and I think there will be other scandals, other groups of people. We've seen my colleague Alison Steelos at the moment is working on the case of skilled migrants who have made one small mistake in their tax return and they're being picked off. Selected for harassment by the Home Office. We've seen it happen to certain groups of students in the United Kingdom, and I think all these things are the inevitable result of the overall unobtainable target and the hostile environment policy.
We know Ruth Davidson has criticised her own UK government in terms of their approach to immigration. Do you think she's doing enough to tackle criticism?
No, she's not. And if she thinks that what the British government's policy is wrong, she should get her MPs at Westminster to stand up against it. I spend all my time at Westminster during the week, and I can absolutely tell you that those Tory MPs will not agree with Ruth Davidson on that. Many of them are extremely hostile to migration, and when the SNP have tried to put forward arguments based on evidence that the Scottish economy requires and would benefit from migration, they shout us down, and they're just not open to discussion on it. It's interesting, though, that Ruth should feel that she has to say something. I suspect the reason she feels that she has to say something, though I don't think she'll actually do anything, is because even business in Scotland is now saying that we need a flexible migration policy, and the UK government's migration policy doesn't meet the needs of business. The CBI have said we need a migration policy based on people rather than figures. The Chambers of Commerce in Scotland and the Institute of Directors in Scotland have been critical of UK immigration policy and have said that they would like the UK government to look at least devolving some powers to the Scottish Parliament. The thing people tend to start with is the post-study work visa to encourage students who've come to study in the UK to stay on afterwards and work in the United Kingdom and contribute to the economy.
You talk about how Scotland needs more immigration to maybe tackle, as your party argues, an Asian population.
Yeah.
Do you think Brexit will help with that?
Well, no, because at the moment we've got 200,000 EU nationals in Scotland, and all the evidence that has been heard by the Brexit Select Committee that I sit on at Westminster is the EU nationals in the United Kingdom make a net contribution to the economy. They contribute more than they take out of the economy. So we wouldn't want to lose those people. And although the British government has given them reassurances about their status, they will tell you, as they told my committee last week, that their confidence in those reassurances has been dented by the Windrush scandal. What my colleagues in the Scottish Government are saying is that demographic research shows that by 2024, the Scottish population will be growing at 3.9%, whereas the English population is growing at 7.5%. We in Scotland need to grow our population more quickly, otherwise we're going to have a very ageing population. So we need to attract people to come and work in Scotland, not just from the European Union, but from beyond. And we have to try and encourage young people, young Scots, to come home. I mean, I'm all for people travelling. The Erasmus scheme's a wonderful thing, going and studying abroad, making careers abroad. But it'd be great if the Scottish economy was in a position like the Irish economy to encourage some of its diaspora to come back and contribute the skills and talents they've learnt abroad to the Scottish economy.
We know the Labour Party have put forward amendments to the EU withdrawal bill, and they make the argument that now their position is absolutely clear on what they want. From your experience, do you believe that Labour are now clear or are clearer on Brexit?
I think Labour are fudging it because McDonnell and Corbyn are not really terribly keen on the European Union. And I think there are many people in the Labour Party who would probably like to see them have gone further. But this amendment last week was a fudge, probably designed to prevent there being a vote in the Commons to keep us in the single market or the customs union. So I think many of us are pretty disappointed in Labour. The only party at Westminster that is 100% united around the idea of keeping the EU in the single market and the customs union is the SNP, and of course also our colleagues in Plaid Cymru. We want to see the whole of the UK, including Scotland and Wales, stay in the single market and the customs union.
When it comes to the first day of conference, we had data from YouGov and the Scottish Social Attitude Survey, and they found positive ratings for the SNP. They're going up in Westminster, they're going up in Holyrood, and he saw that support for independence is going on the rise. In fact, the option for the Scottish independence in terms of the economy was the most popular amongst all the others. Would you say then that this is showing momentum behind the SNP and the Yes movement, or would you argue that actually there's a fair bit more to go until you get across the finishing line?
I think the polls show we're certainly moving in the right direction. I mean, it's very refreshing to see, even before the debate about independence was re-stimulated by the Growth Commission's introduction into the debate, that more people in Scotland than ever before have confidence in the idea that Scotland could stand on its own 2 feet. The job of the SNP and the Yes movement is to encourage more people to believe that, because it is the case, it's clearly the case. We only have to look at other thriving small economies around Western Europe that have a lot less going for them in terms of assets and resources than Scotland.
Joanna Cherry, thank you very much for joining us today at Workers in Scotland.
Thank you very much.
Yesterday, conference passed a topical resolution unanimously supporting Carla Ponsati against Spain's attempt to extradite her on charges including violent rebellion. We interviewed Carla and her lawyer Aamer Anwar about the situation she finds herself in.
Shame on those who sided with the corrupt Spanish government. How can you call it undemocratic? How can you call it undemocratic for a people to vote? How can you call it undemocratic when they threatened 750 mayors with arrest? Undemocratic when they boasted about decapitating a democratically elected Catalan government and unleashed 15,000 Spanish security forces on the people of Catalonia. Conference, there is a statue in Glasgow just 2 minutes from my office called La Passionara, No Passaran. And that monument is dedicated to 534 Scottish volunteers of the International Brigade who left Scotland and died fighting against Franco and his fascists. If that proud memory means anything at all, then our trade unions, our political parties, whether they be the SNP, whether they are Labour or whether they are Green, should unite in solidarity with the people of Catalonia. Clara, if extradited and convicted at the age of 61, could face a sentence of up to 33 years, effectively taking her last breath in a Madrid prison. So silence is not an option for those on the side of justice. The arrest warrant accuses Clara of orchestrating violence at over 2,000 polling stations, yet not one single Spanish police officer has been prosecuted for their violent actions against a defenceless population. The warrant, as far as we are concerned, that we have publicly stated, is a grotesque distortion of the truth by the Spanish state. The court will begin in Edinburgh on the 30th of July, and as Kaylin has said earlier, we desperately need your support. We are taking on a Spanish government who have unlimited resources at their disposal. We have a proud history in this country of protecting those who face a grave risk of injustice. And as a lawyer, I say this, of course, I want to win and to stop Clara's extradition. But even if we do that, even if we win the legal case, Clara would remain trapped as a political exile forever. Today's motion is important because it recognises that whilst we must stand in solidarity with Clara, we must fight for all political exiles to return home and for the unconditional release by Spain of all political prisoners. Clara, let me make this important point. And I know this from some discussions with members of the media today. Clara, nor her legal team, neither expects nor demands that our government interferes with our robust, impartial, independent judicial process. That is, as far as we're concerned, the bottom line. No interference, because if there was interference, then we would be no different from the Spanish government. And I respect that as well as Clara does. The SNP, we ask for your support. This is your opportunity to make history, and as a party, we should never, ever be afraid to raise our voices for the truth. And since the dawn of civilization, for all those pessimists that are out, I don't think there's any pessimists here, but I think outside there's a few of them, and in certain political parties, since the dawn of civilization, people say to me often, no, you can't win. Well, since the dawn of civilization, we have seen the tyranny of empires, but history is littered with the ruin of such empires, and each ruin is a monument not only to mankind's failures, but to the inherent ability of mankind to fight for freedom and to overcome tyranny. If Clara wins, then Catalonia wins. And if Catalonia wins, then Scotland would win. So thank you, and I hope that conference will pass this motion. And Clara Ponsati will let us share.
That's about all I need to say today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am overwhelmed with gratitude to the Scottish people that have shown their support, and that runs in the thousands, in more than the thousands. I am really overwhelmed by the affection and the support that I have received since I put my feet back in Scottish territory in March. What you're doing just shows your deep belief in democracy and human rights, and Catalans are deeply grateful to you for that. By doing this, you're supporting democracy through the world, through Europe, at Scotland and in Catalonia. So thanks, thank you very, very much.
Anwar and Clara Ponsati, thank you very much for joining us today at Broadcasting Scotland. We'll start off with you, Clara. Do you want to give us the background of how you've gotten here today with yourself in Scotland?
Well, I was a professor at St Andrews. I've been a professor at St Andrews for the last 3.5 years. So in the summer, in July 17, I was asked to join the cabinet in the Catalan government, and I accepted, and I took the position of Minister of Education in the Catalan cabinet, and that was on the months and weeks preceding the referendum. So I was the Minister of Education during the referendum days. The schools were open for the people of Catalonia to vote. We were severely repressed by the Spanish police, but we voted nonetheless. So after that, the story is known. Some of us went to Brussels, others were kept in prison, and they are still in preventive prison. I was in Brussels for a few weeks, but then I returned to my job at St Andrews, and that's why I'm here.
And Aamer, what happens next? Obviously, there's a big court case going on just now with issues going on in Catalonia. So what happens next in the process?
Well, Clara faces two charges. One is a charge of rebellion with violence, and the second charge is misappropriation of public funds. If she is extradited and convicted, she faces up to 33 years in a Madrid prison. So we go to court on the 30th of July for nearly 4 weeks, in which we will fight the Kingdom of Spain, who will be appearing on their behalf somebody from the Crown Office. And we formed a legal team to fight this battle, and we're fighting it on many fronts. So, first of all, we believe this is a politically motivated prosecution. We believe that Spain stands accused of abusing the European arrest warrant. We believe that if Clara was to be extradited, then she stands in real danger of having her human rights abused, that she cannot be guaranteed a right to a fair trial, that the impartiality of the Spanish judiciary has already been challenged repeatedly. And to be honest, whilst there is some hope that Rajoy is gone, the attitude of the Socialist Party previously doesn't stand up to much scrutiny in terms of their dealings with the Catalan people. And fundamentally, people should remember this, because everybody keeps saying to me, and of course we're going to win. Nobody can say that, because first of all, it's for the judiciary to decide what happens to Clara. Secondly, it is an uphill struggle. It is a battle of David versus Goliath. The Spanish state has all the resources at their disposal. Normally, in an extradition case in this country, it takes 45 minutes on average if it's a European country, because it's accepted as norm. That European country has an independent judiciary, it's impartial, and the courts will be able to deal with the process. In this case, of course, we are unique. It's unique in UK legal history that we're having to fight this case on these fronts by saying that the Spanish government has politically prosecuted this case, that Clara cannot be guaranteed her rights. And normally when we go to court, that would be for a country, let's say, in Africa, in Russia, in Asia, somewhere like that. Nobody has ever challenged the European government on that basis. So yes, we do face an uphill struggle, but we are determined to fight. And of course, Clara has been overwhelmed, as I have, by the tremendous support that we've received from people across Scotland, across the UK, and right across Europe.
Clara, how are you feeling for the future?
I'm feeling optimist. I mean, I'm feeling that we have an uphill struggle, but I'm ready to fight it, and I trust the system in Scotland. I think that there is guarantees and due process and independence here, and I just hope things will work out.
Clara, Aamer, thank you very much for us today. Have a nice day.
The highlight for conference goers was First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's closing address, which was received with a standing ovation.
Thank you very much, Conference, and now I'll hand you over to the Deputy Leader of the party, Keith Brown MSP.
Conference, I said yesterday it was an immense privilege to be elected as your Deputy Leader. One aspect of that privilege is the pleasure I now have to introduce to you the First Minister of Scotland, the leader of our party, Nicola Sturgeon MSP.
Friends, it's great to be back here in the Granite City. Aberdeen has been through some tough times in the last few years, but it is on the up again. The Oil and Gas Authority said just last month that the North Sea is back. The Westminster parties are currently trying to work out how to claim that as a complete disaster for Scotland. The new city bypass will be open later this year. That's investment of £750 million, neglected for decades by previous administrations and now being delivered by the SNP. And not far from here is the fantastic new Aberdeen offshore wind farm, or as some people like to call it, given his past interest, Trump Towers. The President might not be a fan, but this cutting-edge renewable energy project is an astonishing feat of engineering, and it confirms Scotland's rightful place as Europe's energy powerhouse. Scottish Government launched a £12 million transition training fund to help people in the energy industry enhance their skills and expertise. The aim was to help 1,000 people a year. That target has been exceeded. 3,300 energy workers are now benefiting. And therein lies a difference between the SNP and the Westminster parties. When the oil price fell, Labour and the Tories saw it as an opportunity to talk down Scotland's potential. We, the SNP, got to work to protect Scottish jobs. Aberdeen is a great Scottish city. It is a truly international city too. Nearly a quarter of all people who live here were born outside the UK. Those who've made Aberdeen their home have helped create wealth and jobs. They have enriched the city and our country in so many different ways. Friends, Westminster might want to create a hostile environment for migrants. But let me make this clear today. That policy is not in our name. Our message to everyone who has chosen to build a life here in Aberdeen or anywhere in Scotland is this: you are welcome and we want you to stay. Westminster's hostile environment is not just a slogan. It has a real impact on our communities, our schools and our hospitals. Recently, a school on the Isle of Mull struggled to fill a Gaelic teaching vacancy. Eventually, a teacher from Canada applied for and got the job, and then she found herself blocked by the Home Office. When John Swinney took up the case with the UK government, he was told that they wouldn't even send a reply. Well, the Tories might not reply to us, but I think we should reply to them. Drop your anti-migrant obsession, drop it now and put our school pupils first. Of course, the hostile environment is not just affecting schools, it's hitting our health service too. Since the Brexit vote, there's been a huge drop in the number of EU nurses registering in the UK. And until a couple of days ago, a young student nurse from Paisley, a former member of the Scottish Youth Parliament, Denzel Darku, was being threatened with deportation. At first sight, that beggars belief. But in reality, it's just the Tories being true to form. Hostile to migrants and neglecting the NHS, shame on them. The SNP has different aspirations for Scotland. We need and we want people to come to work in our country. Our prosperity and our public services depend on it. So if Westminster cannot or will not act in our best interests, it is time that our own Parliament was able to do so. It is time for powers over migration to come to Scotland. Next year, our Scottish Parliament will mark its 20th anniversary. Having a Parliament of our own has changed Scotland, and it has changed Scotland for the better. It has allowed us to protect our NHS from privatisation, deliver free personal care, mitigate the bedroom tax, set and meet world-leading climate change targets and much more besides. It has also meant we could abolish student tuition fees. And let me reaffirm this today. For as long as the SNP remains in office, tuition fees are not coming back. This 20-year milestone should be a time of celebration. Instead, the powers of our Parliament are under threat like never before. On Tuesday, the EU withdrawal bill returns to the House of Commons. As it stands, that bill allows UK ministers to remove Scotland's powers for up to 7 years. Agriculture, fishing, trade, environmental standards, consumer protections, areas that really matter to people and to businesses across our country. And they want to be able to do so against the will of the Scottish Parliament. Friends, that is completely unacceptable. That's why the Scottish Parliament voted overwhelmingly and across different parties to refuse consent to this power grab. There was only one party happy to sign away Scotland's powers. Yes, you guessed it, the Tories. So you can imagine the surprise when Ruth Davidson, asked recently about the possibility of the UK legislating for Northern Ireland, said this: "I know how angry I would be if the House of Commons legislated on a domestic Scottish issue over the head of Holyrood." Yes, the very same Ruth Davidson who argued for, demanded, and then voted to allow the House of Commons to do exactly that. Now let's be frank, Ruth Davidson's rhetoric very rarely survives contact with reality. But that took her hypocrisy to a whole new level. Next week, the prevaricating comes to an end. It is decision time for the Tories. They can choose to respect devolution, or they can prove what many in Scotland have long believed. The Tories cannot be trusted with the Scottish Parliament, not now, not ever. The government at Westminster is paralysed on Brexit. In fact, stripping Scotland of its powers might be the only Brexit-related issue they can agree on. Everything else is on hold as they fight among themselves. Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for the 19th century, is waiting in the wings to drag us back 200 years, where he'll no doubt find the DUP waiting for him. The Prime Minister rules out membership of the single market and the customs union, even though she has absolutely no idea what to replace it with. All of her efforts are spent trying to stop her totally dysfunctional cabinet falling apart. And isn't that going well? Remember, during the independence referendum, Scotland was told that a no vote would mean strength and stability. Now we have a Foreign Secretary who says the country is heading for meltdown. But don't panic, he says, it will all be worth it. Conference, even among the Tories, there can rarely have been an individual so unfit for high office as Boris Johnson. Theresa May says Boris is just Boris. We say he is an embarrassing liability and enough is enough. Not care a jot for jobs, prosperity and living standards. This UK government is a shambles. It is reckless, it is selfish, and the sooner it holds no sway over Scotland, the better for all of us. Westminster wants to drag Scotland back. The Scottish Government is moving Scotland forward. Every day we strive to make this country a better place to live. We are governing in tough times. The legacy of recession and Westminster austerity challenge us every single day. In countries across the world, social democracy appears to be in retreat, and many long-established political norms are now in a state of flux. For progressive parties like ours, that makes it more important than ever to focus on what makes a difference and to stand up for what we believe in. Sometimes that means taking on powerful interests and making tough decisions, and that's what we do. We're the party with the courage in government to ask people who can afford it to pay a bit more in income tax to protect our precious public services, and we should be proud of that. Last month, we became the first country in the world to introduce minimum pricing for alcohol. That policy is not universally popular, but it will save lives. We overcame many hurdles along the way, and we should be proud that we persevered. We're also getting Scotland's economy ready for the future. We're setting up a new Scottish National Investment Bank. It will put Scotland at the forefront of technological and environmental innovation and help to create jobs. Of course, it will take a couple of years to get the bank up and running. So to bridge the gap, we have announced £150 million over the next 2 years for a new Building Scotland fund. Friends, I can announce today that this fund is now open for business. £70 million will be invested in this financial year. £20 million of it will support industry-led R&D projects and digital innovation. £25 million will support new low-carbon industrial facilities. And another £25 million will support the delivery of 3,000 new homes. And just to be clear, that's 3,000 over and above our existing target of 50,000 affordable homes over this Parliament. Boosting the economy now, preparing it for the future, and building the homes that people need. We are taking Scotland forward while Westminster tries to drag us back. We're creating a fairer Scotland too. In April, the Scottish Parliament passed the Social Security Bill. Westminster is punishing the poor and the sick. The Scottish Government will always treat people with dignity and with respect. Now, we can't undo all the damage Westminster is doing, but where we can make a difference, we will. One of the biggest debts we owe as a country is to unpaid carers. Let's thank them today for all that they do. We can never fully repay that debt, but now that carers' allowances devolved, we can make a down payment. I can confirm today that from this summer, backdated to April, we will increase carers' allowance by more than £500 a year. From next summer, we'll also deliver the new Best Start grant to help tackle child poverty. It will give £600 to low-income families on the birth of their first child, £300 for each additional child, and further payments at key milestones in children's lives. And let me put this beyond any doubt. There will be no two-child cap and no rape clause under the we're working to move Scotland forward. For many people, the cost of living is a big worry, so we're doing what we can to give a helping hand. Here in Aberdeen, we piloted a scheme to provide free sanitary products to those in low-income households. We're now investing £500,000 to extend it across Scotland, practical help to those who need it, and leading the world in tackling gender injustice. We've also announced a new £100 minimum school clothing grant. That grant will benefit 120,000 families across Scotland, helping people who need it most. And perhaps most importantly of all, we've just struck a deal with councils to invest almost £1 billion a year to double free childcare. Before about the transformational potential of this policy for children, about the 11,000 new childcare jobs it will create, and the thousands of pounds it will save families every year. Let me tell you now about the economic boost it will deliver over the next few years. I can announce today that by the end of this Parliament, around 750 nurseries across the length and breadth of our country will be built, expanded or refurbished, a huge national construction programme to give our children the very best start in life. Friends, most of the progress I've just talked about hasn't happened over the course of the past 11 years of SNP government, or even in the last 2 years. Most of it has happened in the last 2 months. That's what you call a government moving Scotland forward. And we're determined to keep Scotland moving forward. I spoke earlier about our commitment to protect free university education. Free tuition is necessary to support working class kids into higher education. It is necessary, but we know that it is not enough on its own. That's why we set up a review of the living support we provide to students. That review recommended that we increase our investment in student support in the first instance by £16 million a year. I can announce today that we will go further. By the end of this Parliament, we will increase funding for student support by more than £20 million a year. The details will be announced by the Higher Education Minister before the summer recess, but let me share the highlights with you today. As a first step in meeting the ambitions of the review, we will spend £16 million next year to increase college bursaries and university grants for students from the lowest income families, and we will expand access to them as well. We will also start paying back student loans. Right now, they start paying at a little more than £18,000. In our manifesto, we said we would increase that to £22,000. I can confirm today we will go further. By 2021, we will increase it to £25,000. And lastly, an issue very close to my heart. 2 years ago, I spoke about the obligations we owe to young people who grow up in care. I set out plans for a fundamental review of the care system with love at its heart. And let me take a moment to congratulate Who Cares Scotland. Their campaigning work inspired this review, and they've just been named UK Charity of the Year in recognition of that success. Has already made sure that young care leavers are exempt from paying the council tax, and we've guaranteed places and full grants for all care experienced young people who get the grades to go to university. But we want to do more to level the playing field. I can announce today that with an investment of more than £5 million this year, we will increase the grant for every care experienced young person at university or at college to £8,100. For college students, that will almost double support, and for everyone, that is equivalent to the real living wage. I've made clear my determination to close the education gap between our richest and poorest young people. Today we take another step along that road. Friends, we are moving Scotland forward step by step. We're not just talking about creating a more prosperous, fairer country. We're taking action now to build the kind of country we know is possible. And we are using every power at our disposal. As with social security, the majority of tax powers are still held by Westminster, but in our budget we announced an extra £400 million for health. We could only do that because we reformed the income tax system to make it fairer and raise more money. Labour, for all their talk, voted against these progressive tax changes. Now, we shouldn't be surprised. When it comes to action, rather than empty words, Labour is found wanting time and again. We can see that here in Aberdeen. Unbelievably, they still refuse to expel their 9 suspended councillors who are working with the Tories to force through £125 million of cuts to local services. What an utter disgrace. The bonds of better together are very hard to break. When the Tories joined with Labour to oppose our budget, they wanted tax cuts for the richest instead of investment in our NHS. They would have cut spending on public services by more than £500 million. That's equivalent to 12,000 nurses. Friends, let me make this clear. When it comes to a choice between tax cuts for the richest or spending more in our health service, we will choose the NHS every single time. We know how important the NHS is to the people of Scotland. Health services everywhere are facing real challenges, and ours is no exception. So we will continue to focus on the areas where improvement is needed. But we should also pay tribute to the collective effort of staff when progress is made. So let's take this opportunity to thank our NHS staff for delivering the best performing A&E departments in the UK for more than 3 years running. None of the progress we need to see in our NHS will be possible without the dedication of those who work in it. We know that for NHS staff and all those who work in our public services, the last few years of pay restraint have been tough. That's why I'm proud that our government was the first in the UK to lift the 1% pay cap. Right now, we're in negotiations to agree a 3-year pay deal for NHS staff, which will not just match, but exceed the deal agreed in England. I hope these talks reach a positive conclusion soon. But I don't want those working so hard in the NHS to have to wait for that agreement to get a pay rise this year. So I can announce today that we will make a payment on account. All staff working under NHS Agenda for Change and earning up to £80,000 will get an immediate 3% pay rise, and it will be in their pay package next month. As in NHS England this year, but more. Let me give just a few examples. A nurse with 5 years' experience in Band 5, £430 better off. A healthcare assistant at the top of Band 3, £630 better off. And an auxiliary nurse with a year's experience, more than £830 better off in NHS Scotland. And before the Tories ask, yes, that is after tax. Friends, this is a £160 million investment in those who care for us. And as our precious NHS reaches its 70th birthday, it comes with our grateful thanks for all that they do. Friends, one of the biggest challenges facing our NHS today arises from a really positive development. People are living longer. That is unambiguously a good thing, but it means we must do more to grow our working age population so that we have more people to create wealth and pay taxes and more people to work in our NHS. That means creating more opportunities for people born here and attracting more talent from the rest of the UK and across the world. Of course, how we do all of that was one of the big issues addressed by the Sustainable Growth Commission. Andrew Wilson and his team have given generously of their time and their energies. The Commission has done an excellent job and we thank them for it. Over the summer, our fantastic new Deputy Leader, Keith Brown, will lead a debate about its recommendations. It will be a debate open to views and ideas from within and beyond our party, and it will focus on how to make the most of our potential as a country, not simply limit the damage Brexit will do, and what a refreshing change that will be. My sense as I travel this country is that people have had enough of the despair and the despondency of Brexit. They want to be inspired by the hope of a better future instead. Friends, our task is to persuade them that this better future is an independent one. On which we will renew the case for independence. It doesn't shy away from challenges, and nor should it. It doesn't pretend there are always easy answers. No one believes that. But it does lay strong foundations for independence, and it busts some Westminster myths along the way as well. On the deficit, created on Westminster's watch, remember, it shows that the scare stories of Labour and the Tories are completely bogus. Even with no extra growth from independence, the deficit can be turned around within 5 to 10 years, and it can be done with public spending rising, not falling. Friends, that offers a much brighter future for Scotland than Brexit decline and yet more Westminster austerity. And let me be clear about this. The SNP has fought Tory austerity since the days when it was Labour's Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling implementing it, ending the self-defeating damage of austerity is and always will be our priority. The purpose of independence is to build a better country, a stronger economy and a fairer society. The Growth Commission offers a blueprint of how we can do that. It recognises that independence is about the freedom to make our own choices. It's about equipping ourselves with the full powers to lift people out of poverty, to tackle the inequality that limits our potential. It's about the ability to use our finite oil wealth to build the industries of the future. It's about having the powers to encourage more talented people to live, work and contribute here, and making sure that our young people can travel, study and work in other countries too. It's about letting our businesses trade freely across the UK, Europe and beyond. And it's about investing in our National Health Service instead of wasting billions of pounds on trident weapons of mass destruction. The case for independence is strong, and it is getting stronger by the day. Research published yesterday had at its heart a quite remarkable finding. It showed that the number of people in Scotland who believe that independence will make our economy better has risen dramatically. And for the first time, those of us who believe that now outnumber those who believe the opposite. Confidence in the independence case is growing. So as we wait for the fog of Brexit to clear, our opportunity, indeed our responsibility is this: not just to focus on the when of independence, but to use our energy and our passion to persuade those who still ask why. Right now, that is the more important task. And if we do that, let me tell you this: I am more certain than ever before that persuading a majority of our fellow citizens that Scotland should be an independent country is well within our grasp. Like countries everywhere, Scotland faces challenges in this uncertain world, but we have potential aplenty, and we have so much to look forward to. You know, I've been very struck recently by some surveys that have reported on Scottish attitudes to life. It seems we're getting happier. Frankly, I blame the Scottish Government. People in Scotland are also more likely to be optimistic about the future than people elsewhere in the UK. More of us say that our country's best days are ahead of us, and that's despite us not being in the World Cup again. But the serious point is this. Our message of hope and ambition is in tune with a country that feels optimistic about the future, so let us grasp that opportunity. Friends, the lanyards that many of you are wearing around your necks bear the words, "We can." A simple phrase that speaks to this growing sense of optimism. From the magnificent Kelpies to the Queensferry crossing, it reflects our artistic and engineering genius. It speaks to how, as a country, we can care for our children, champion equality and human rights, and strive to be at the forefront of innovation. But most positively of all, it seeks to give a voice to all those who call Scotland home. The we is everyone who chooses to live here. The refugees who have fled war and found in Scotland a place of love and safety. The scientists working in our world-class universities, our sportsmen and women who perform on the world stage, the medical researchers from all over the world improving and saving lives, and all those who dedicate themselves to caring for others. This, all of this and more is modern Scotland. Open, welcoming, caring, progressive and pioneering. This is who we are. Our country. Our country is bursting with talent. I see it each and every single day. Our task, working together, is to unlock all of that potential, to make sure that no one is left behind, that we do not allow our horizons to be narrowed, to make sure that we keep moving forward, building a stronger society here at home and playing our part in the better, cleaner, safer world we want to live in. It's time to aim high, look resolutely outwards, and never, ever accept second best. Above all, it's time to believe that we can. We can build that better country we know is possible. And friends, we will.
Thank you for watching the second of our conference special reports. We hope you enjoyed them, and stay tuned for the full Scottish, which is coming up next. See you there.